Okay, so let's get started. Uh, Again, welcome everyone who's joining us this evening. This is the Princeton Review's webinar, So You Want to Be a Doctor, College Admissions for the Pre-Med Students. My name is Anna, and in just a few moments I will introduce our guest speaker for the evening. But I do want to cover a few housekeeping items with you before we get started. And so again, my name is Anna, and I am with the National Marketing Team with the Princeton Review, and I will be helping along with the session this evening. So before we get started, the two things I just wanted to go over with y'all is that all of your lines are muted, and they will be for the duration of this session. If you do have a question, please go ahead and use the question chat box on your GoToWebinar control panel. And go ahead and anytime during the session, please just send us questions, and we will be going through a Q&A session once we are done with the webinar. The second thing I wanted to share with you is that this session is going to be recorded, and so everyone joining us this evening will be receiving this recording by email within 24 to 48 hours after the session has completed. So just sit back, relax, don't worry about taking notes. Please send us your questions, but hopefully everything we talked to you about this evening you will find interesting and informative, and will help make sure that you, if you are interested in going into the medical field, that this is the right choice for you. So as we begin, I do want to just cover that myself, Anna, I am located in New York, Long Island, New York. And our guest speaker for this evening is our medical school college admissions expert, our in-house expert, Anita Pardue. And she will be giving you guys so much insight this evening. I'm actually really excited to have her join us this evening. And so, Anita, I'm going to pass it right over to you. Hi, Anita. Welcome.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So let me tell you a little bit about me and kind of this whole aspect of why I might have some insight into what it takes to become a doctor. So I have been doing this for over 15 years, actually getting close to 20 now. I feel like I'm old as dirt. But I've counseled probably over 10,000 medical school applicants in my time. I've worked directly for 5 different medical schools doing admissions, interviewing, etc. And I'm actually the former director of a health professions advising program at an R1 institution. So basically, I've been on all sides of this. So I'm an MD. I've got a master's in education. I've got a couple of PhDs. Guys, don't be impressed. I didn't want to get a job. What I want to tell you, though, is I've been there, okay? I've been the high school student going to college, deciding I want to go to med school, and I know what it's like to try to get in and what that means. I've been on the other side of having gone all the way through med school, worked in it, worked out in the field, and then taken on the responsibility of helping try to screen people who want to go at the medical school level, as well as advising students. So I've kind of got that insight on all of those sides. So I've come to Princeton Review to kind of help guide students through college on that path to med school. And since you guys are getting ready to look at colleges, I thought this would be a good opportunity to give you some insight, because it's not uncommon to get kids who are really strong academically, high achievers in high school who go, I want to be a doctor, because you know, in some ways that's seen as sort of the pinnacle of an outcome of where you are. It seems like a great, you know, I always go, why do you want to be a doctor? And I will tell you, if I hear one more time this year, I want to help and serve people. I really like science, and I had a grandparent or somebody who got sick, and I really want to make a difference. Those are actually all really, really good things. But the truth is, it's so much more than that, and I'm really trying to help you guys get an idea about that and what it takes to get there. So before we jump into this, I want to do a couple of polls to see if, and my polls are not working. They never seem to want to work for me. We want to do a couple of polls to figure out, you know, kind of where you guys are and what you're doing. Let me try. Let's move forward. Nope, it's not going to do it. So
I got it.
Anna, can you?
Yep.
You got it?
I got it. Here we go. First poll right up there for you guys.
Thank you. So let me get some idea. I'd like to actually know what grade you guys are in, so we know what sort of what folks we're talking to and kind of where you are in the planning stage. So we'll give you just a second to key that in. So we got some of you guys who are actually already in the undergraduate aspect, so this will be really helpful for you guys. And we've got a lot of folks who are applying and getting ready to apply. So about 75–80% of you guys are in 11th and 12th grade. So you're like on the cusp of getting ready to take this step, and I'm super excited to see about 15% of you guys in the 9th grade. So how about one more question, so I can get some idea of where you guys actually are. So let me know what region of the country you're in. Look at that, 64% of you guys in the Northeast kind of hanging out where we are. Of course, I'm more South, but you're still kind of in that. Come on, bring me some Southeast people down here with me in North Carolina. You guys like my Southern accent, I'm sure. All right, so we're kind of interspersed. That is exactly what I needed to know. Anna, should I hit this start broadcast, or are we good?
We're good.
All right, so I can trudge along. All right, so the medical career, what exactly does that mean? I mean, let's just start with the basics of it, of what we're looking for. Oops, sorry, my apologies. So when you're talking about going to med school, so you got your 4 years of high school, you got 4 years of undergraduate, you got 4 years of med school, and depending upon the residency specialty you go in, you're looking at a minimum of 3 years. If you're looking at something like cardiothoracic surgery or general surgery, you can look at up to 10 years of residency to follow that. So not uncommon to see folks coming out 34, 36, whatever, who are just really starting their medical careers. And some will go on to do fellowships. Now, I know when you guys are in high school that 36 or whatever sounds like you're old as dirt. And I deal with this all the time because pre-meds are really, really driven. I often talk about you guys as being like hamsters on a treadmill, because when I used to work with folks at the college level, I get my high school students coming in and they're like, you know, I want to go to early college and I want to do everything that I can to try to get through as quickly as possible because it's such a long journey and I want to get to where I want to be, and it's just, I don't want to be so old and I want to have a family. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is to build a bridge and get over it, okay? The average admitting age to medical school is 27. And I know right now that 27, 30, 40 sounds like a dinosaur. It's just the cusp of where you are. So do it right, take your time, and learn about the thing you're going to spend the rest of your life doing as a career. And we're going to talk a little bit later about gap years, and it's actually becoming much more common for kids to take gap years between high school and college, and especially college and med school. And I'm going to let you know why that's often beneficial. All right. So what does it take to get into medical school? And I will tell you, it's more than I want to help and serve people, and I really like science. It's much more than that. Let's just actually look at the numbers of what we're working with here. If you look at the trend from 2006 up to where we are, look at this increase from 39,000 to over 53,000 applicants. Those are people who actually applied. Look at these GPAs. We're seeing them continue to increase every year for people who are applying. But much more important, look at the matriculates, the people who actually got in. So if you're looking at last year, we had 53,000 applicants, 21,000 people getting in. You're looking at about an average of anywhere from 39% to 42% of people who apply actually get in, okay, which means more people are denied than get in. So before you go out and slit your wrist, let me help you understand what it takes to get there. So these are the big numbers we want to start thinking about. If you're looking at the mean or the average GPA, we're looking at about a 3.7 and about a 508 on the new MCAT score, which is actually equivalent to about our old 30 to 31. So getting into med school should be thought about if you're an athlete. And we think about it, you see a lot of kids who are like really, really good high school athletes, but only a few of them will get a scholarship to play in college. And those kids are amazing. It's kind of like you guys will be when you're in college. The pre-med students, they're typically the kids with the great GPAs and everything else they're doing. When people are looking at them going, wow, you're so smart. But when you're competing with people who are applying, you just sort of blend in. And so when we think about the college athlete who actually gets a nod to go to play pro, That's kind of like what it's like for getting into med school. But you guys can do it with the right planning. Okay, so oftentimes I see a lot of high school kids who are trying to do a whole bunch of stuff, like I'm volunteering in a hospital and I'm doing all this other stuff and I'm going to these special pre-med camps and things like that. And don't get me wrong, they're beneficial in helping you understand why you want to do this. They're not going to do jack boo squat for your future medical school application. So that's the first thing you need to understand. As a general rule, when you're applying to med school, they really only care about the things you've done the summer before you went to college and then forward. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing stuff now, but it does mean that you can't knock everything out in high school. So take high school to get the achievements you need to get into a good, strong college to prepare you for med school. So let's think about a little bit about those things. The med school admissions timeline. So unlike college, when you typically apply in your senior year, you're actually going to start your application more so in your junior year. So if you're thinking about your timeline, that literally gives you 3 academic years and 2 summers to pull everything together. So it's important going into college that you think about the coursework and the other components that go into making a strong application. And I'm going to show you guys more of those other components soon, because one of the biggest problems I run into is kids get so obsessed about having a 4.0 GPA and getting this great MCAT score that they forget to do everything else. So let's look at some basics. So when you're talking about applying to med school, generally we're going to want to see your core prerequisites are going to be 1 year of biology with lab, 1 year of regular chemistry, 1 year of organic chemistry, 1 year of physics, and at least 1 semester of psychology. Those are your bare minimums. As a general rule, most schools want to see 1 year of calculus, okay? So when you're starting, you want to plan out what you're going to take. Now, oftentimes I get, do I have to be a pre-med major? And no, you don't. All you have to do is take the core prerequisites as part of your undergrad curriculum that you're going to need to apply. So you can be a history major, you can be a bees and beekeeping major, probably wouldn't recommend that one. You can be an engineer, whatever you want to do. But I want you guys to step back and think, 53,000 plus applications. Okay, a lot of kids go, I want to do a different major to stand out. I want to do this. You're going to find out very soon that the average med school gets between 7,000 and 10,000 applications, which means they're not poring over everything in your application. We're going to talk about that in just a minute, but they're going to use screening parameters. So we really don't care what your major is. We care that you do well. We care that you like what you're going into. So for me, I will tell you guys that I found things like sociology and things like that pretty interesting, but my brain thinks like a scientist, okay? So if I had majored in something just to make me look better, I'd have probably done very poorly in school because those school classes didn't really fit what I wanted to do. And if you decide along this track that maybe med school isn't your jang, then why don't have a major in something that you could actually use? So think about what you're doing, pick a major that you're interested in, and make sure you get these core prerequisites. Your freshman year, generally what we're saying is hit some bio, hit some chemistry, get a math. Don't jump into every freaking club out there. Use your first semester to kind of explore some different opportunities and some courses. And then in your second semester of your freshman year, maybe join something or find things that you like and start to get involved. Your sophomore year, again, you're going to start to build on your profile. Now, oftentimes during that first summer between your freshman and sophomore year, we'll encourage you to maybe take a study abroad experience, do a summer study abroad, or do a summer research experience. And we're going to talk more about research in just a few minutes, but start adding to your portfolio. Don't wait till the end of your sophomore year to start looking for clinical experience, because in a minute, I'm going to tell you how much you actually need. By your junior year, you should be finishing up your physics and getting your biochemistry and really starting to build your profile, because you will find out that we're going to want you to build your personal statement and all the components of your application by the spring of your junior year, because the medical application actually opens in May of your junior year, much different from when you're applying to college. You also want to make sure that you have registered for and studied for your MCAT no later than spring of your junior year. Not summer, not fall, but spring of your junior year, or at least the year that you're planning to apply. Okay, so what we generally say is during your junior year or the year you're planning to apply, November to January, you're going to work on a personal statement. February to March, you're going to start writing out your experiences. We want to finalize everything in your application by April of your junior year, much sooner than a lot of people think, or that year that you're applying. And then be ready to submit your application in June when it opens. The AMCAS application says that primary applications can be submitted anywhere until like November 1st or December 15th. Those are guidelines. I have really had no one submit after mid-July or August who actually gained an acceptance. So it is important, because most admissions are rolling admissions, to be first out of the gate, and that takes preparing. During your summer of your junior year, you'll be doing these applications and filling out secondaries. And that's what's also different from med school. You have a main application, then you have secondary applications, then you have interviews. It's a year-long process that starts in May and ends the following April. All right, so when should I take our MCAT? So just like you guys looking at your SAT, you're working on building all of your GPA, and then you have to take that dreaded MCAT. Now, I've already told you that you need to hit your core prerequisites before you want to take your MCAT. A lot of people tell me, how long should I prepare for studying? I get a lot of freshmen who come in who go, I'm going to start studying now. It's really not going to do you a whole lot of good, because you're not going to have the base content. On an average, most students study about 6 months for their MCAT. They often take a prep course, much like what we offer with the Princeton Review, which can run anywhere from 3 to 4 months to some of our sort of crash courses, what we call our 3 and our 5 week. We have what we call holiday hell, summer boot camp, summer immersion. And then they typically take 1 or 2 months after to really practice their MCAT skills. So it's really important. Why is it important? Well, remember I told you that we've got about 53,000 applications, and an average school will get about 7,000 applications to 10,000. So they are mostly going to use an electronic screen, which means they're going to take your application, they're going to put it through, and they're going to look for baseline screening, their MCAT score and their GPA. The average admitting GPA is 3.65 to 3.75. The average admitting MCAT score is about 509. Lord have mercy, I can't get my numbers right. 509. So guys, this is what I really struggle with. Kids get so obsessed with their GPA. And the thing is because there's a lot of variation in GPA, schools tend to put more weight on their MCAT. So as a rule of thumb, a very strong MCAT score can help offset a slightly lower GPA. And when I say slightly lower, I'm talking 3.5 to 3.4. Okay, not like a 2.0 or a 2.9. Okay, but a poor MCAT score kills a 4.0. So you can have a beautiful 4.0, but if you get an MCAT score like in the low 500s, it will kill your beautiful GPA. So make sure to allow plenty of time. So when we're talking about the MCAT, it's a bear. Guys, check out this number, 6 hours and 15 minutes. This is not something that you prep for the night before. It is not just about taking a course, but about practice, practice, practice. You see, the MCAT, and a lot of us, I'm not criticizing you, but a lot of us learn by memorizing the information for a test and literally like throwing it back up for that test and moving on to the next section. The MCAT really, really tests your ability to take your core base knowledge and to synthesize it. So if you're looking at these sections, they run basically about 95 minutes apiece, except for the analysis and reasoning. They all run from about 59 to 53 questions and are generally composed of about 10 passages each that have anywhere from 4 to 6 questions. This last section, the newest, the Psych-Soc section, has 10 passages and about 15 freestanding questions. But overall, you're looking at about 230 questions over about a 6-hour period. So one of the most important things in addition to prepping is doing full practice tests. That's what we do with Princeton Review. We offer up a host of practice tests, and then we say, practice, 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 because you've got to build your stamina. Okay, so it's just like being a distance runner. You have got to build your stamina for taking a test that is this long. Now, you can take that test up to 7 times in a lifetime. You can only take the test 3 times in 1 year. We typically test between January and September in any application year. Again, ideally, you want to test somewhere between January and April of the year you're applying, or the summer before if you've really got your prereqs out of the way. Okay, and you cannot test more than 4 times in 2 years. That's why it's important to be prepared, and you never, ever, ever take the test just to see how you might do. So again, this is a really important slide. Minimum requirements. Here's our average. I already told you. Minimum is at least a 3.3 or above, and this is going to be really tough for an MD program. You might look at an osteopathic program when you're starting to get into this area. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The average MCAT is about 508 to 509. What we say is 512 literally makes the school sort of take a deep breath and go, ah. So let me put this a little bit in perspective. About a 500 is about the 50th percentile. We're looking more at about the 78th to 80th percentile here. And then about a 512 sort of makes schools relax. And at a 516 to a 518, it really makes them turn heads. And this score can run up to a 528. So you see how high we're getting here. When we're talking about clinical experience, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Once you get past these core things, we are also looking for, as an average, a minimum of about 100 hours of clinical exposure in 3 to 4 different disciplines like surgery, primary care, etc. Diversity is better over quantity. I would rather see shadowing or work in 3 to 5 specialties for 100 hours than 600 hours in one specialty. And paid clinical experience is the bomb daddy when you guys get into this. Being like a CNA, getting your EMT, and this is the big one right now, working as a medical scribe. If your credentials are lower, oops, my screen is super sensitive, you might want to look at getting a master's degree before you're applying. Here's the other thing. Oftentimes students will go, I just want to put my application out there because I really want them to see how much I care. I will tell you that really doesn't weigh well with us, okay? In the medical school screening, when we've already got more applicants than we need, to us, that looks like you're not informed, all right? All of these are things that I do with part of my medical admissions counseling and that we at the Princeton Review can help you guys with once you get to that point. And we can help guide you through your freshman and sophomore year as well as through the application process. So, MD versus DO, that's just sort of a question. That's a medical doctor versus an osteopathic physician. Osteopathic physicians actually go through exactly the same training as a medical doctor. The advantage is because these programs are not quite as well known by some folks out in the general area. They often will take a slightly lower GPA and a slightly lower MCAT. The really cool thing about osteopathic medicine is not only do you get all the training, you can apply to all the same residency programs as MDs, but you also get all additional training in holistic medicine as well as manipulative medicine. Not really when we talk about chiropractic, but an understanding of how the joints and everything move. So I often say it's like everything an MD can do and a whole different bag of tricks. All right, gap years. This is the big thing for med schools. Med schools love gap years. I've never had a student take a gap year that did not come out better. Because again, remember I said you guys were like hamsters on a treadmill. I got to get through high school. I got to get through college. Okay, so if you do that, you apply to med school, you go all the way through med school, you have no idea what it's like to live in the real world, to have a job, to work with people like you're going to be treating, to do more things other than just study. My son is actually a second year in med school right now. I begged him to take a gap year. He ain't going to listen to mom. Actually, he told me today he wishes that he really had. Not because he's not getting straight A's in med school, which he's doing. It's that he never took the time to take a breather academically and to really get additional exposure. Med schools prefer the older applicant who's got paid clinical, who's really seen the world. All right, so let's talk about what does it mean. Oh, one quick thing. A lot of students talk to me about combined MD programs, BSMD programs, getting through in 7 years, getting through in 8 years. The first thing I say is why. I get this whole idea that you want to gain your acceptance and you want to know where you're going, but 95% of those programs still require you to take the MCAT, and you limit yourself to specifically that program, okay? And I know a lot of you guys think you want to be a doctor, but how do you know you want to be a doctor? Have you actually worked in the field? Have you spent the time out there? Have you done something more than watching ER or just shadowed somebody? It's really important to try to figure out why you want to do this career, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. But yes, they are out there. Yes, the Princeton Review for the high school admissions and med admissions can help you with that, but I really like to see students keep their options open, but we can help with that. So know what it takes. Remember I told you that when you submit your application, not only will you write a personal statement, but you'll write about your experiences, kind of like for college where you list them, but much more so for med school. What experiences are we looking for? I'm going to give you some insight right now. All right, before we do so, we've got a survey time. So if you don't mind over there, Anna, since my polls are not working, can you help me out? Yeah, mine are not working. Thank you so much. So let's chat. What kind of things have or are you guys considering doing? Volunteering in a hospital, maybe in a lab, taking college level courses, or have you not done any of the above? And again, you're not out of everything from here. So let me give you my little joke here. So I see that 58%, almost 60% of you guys have already started volunteering in some type of hospital setting, okay? And that's really good, okay? Don't get me wrong. But if you want to train to be a stewardess or a cabin server or whatever we call it on an airplane where you're handing out things or whatever, volunteering in a hospital can also be good for that because you're giving out blankets, you're helping people, but to really get an understanding of what medicine is about takes a different step. I'm going to share a story with you guys in just a few minutes. So academic experiences. People get really focused on GPA and test scores. There is more than that. What other things are there? Research, okay? And it's great if you have an opportunity in high school to think you might want to do some research, but research opportunities for us, if you want to count it for med school, as a general rule of thumb, you want to do a minimum of a semester, at least a year is really what we call significant research experience. Now, there are a lot of summer research opportunities, and they're not bad, but they're really for giving you the opportunity for figuring out what research is all about. We're not expecting you to get published or make discoveries, and I hear a lot of people going, I'm not going to get into med school if I don't do research. That is not true, okay? Not required, but beneficial. Becoming a teaching assistant or a tutor, okay, that looks really good on your application, but the reason we like to see you guys do that is so that you can learn how to explain things to your patients. Okay, some of the smartest doctors that I know are the worst physicians I know. And that's because they can't even talk to their patients. If you walk into a patient and go, girl, you got diabetes, you're gonna die. your patient is going to shut you out. They need to know how to relate to a patient, to explain something in terms that they'll be able to understand. Getting experience doing things like this really helps you learn how to read patients and how to actually explain things. Study abroad. Wonderful for getting an opportunity to travel. More important for getting outside your bubble. So we're looking for people who have done study abroad, international mission trips, or even just traveled extensively, where they've gained exposure to different cultures, different lifestyles and realities, because in your future practice, that's what you're going to be dealing with. So that's academic. Now, clinical. Guys, we are not expecting you to walk out there, crack it open a chest, and massage somebody's heart. Okay, and please don't actually do that. Clinical experiences are helping you understand why you want to be a doctor. It always used to make me laugh when I'd have people come in and they would talk to me about, oh, I'm going to be a cardiothoracic surgeon. And I'm like, why do you want to be a cardiothoracic surgeon? Because it sounds really interesting. You ever been in surgery? Have you ever done anything? Well, no, but I think I really want to be a pediatrician because I really like kids. Guys, when you're 18 years old, you're not supposed to know what you want to do with your life. You're supposed to know what you're interested in. But getting clinical experience is important for understanding that. And I'll tell you guys, I was exactly just like you. So let me tell you how I got to this point, and I'll help you understand why getting that exposure is important. So I actually did not go to college thinking I wanted to go to med school. Honestly, I went to college because I was going to be a chemical engineer. I was actually pretty good in chemistry, and when I opened the college catalog, it was the thing that they said paid the most money. I thought, I'm getting chemistry? I got this. I'm going to go make a lot of money. I absolutely hated engineering physics and bolted out of that so quickly you have no idea. So my undergrad degree is actually in architectural design, but my junior year, I added pre-med because I had been working in a hospital to earn some money. So I spent a lot of time shadowing a lot of doctors. I actually, getting all that shadowing experience, shadowed like 20 different specialties. But I got the fortunate opportunity to work in a burn unit. And I worked in a burn unit every summer, on my holidays, on my weekends to earn money. And once I knew I wanted to go to med school, to get that clinical experience. So by the time I applied, I thought I was all that in a bag of chips. I had started IVs, I was doing wound treatment, I was taking care of patients. I thought I was prepared for med school. And I was like, this is cool. I'm gonna be a doctor, I'm gonna fix people, I'm gonna make their lives better. Well, the summer that I was applying to med school, everything changed. So I met a young couple who were brought into our burn unit who had been on their way home from their honeymoon, and a drunk driver crossed the center line and hit their car head on. The husband was thrown out of the car, and the car caught on fire, and he went back to catch his wife and to get her out of the car. She actually sustained minimal injuries, but he was burned over 75% of his body, second and third degree burns. If you want to figure out the chance of somebody surviving, you take their percentage burn and add it to their age, and that's their mortality rate. He was 28, 75% of his body. This comes into play later on. But he had been in our burn unit for about 2 months that summer, and this particular day was the first time that we had actually been able to take him off the ventilator. And it was the first time that his wife got to share some time with him. And I was working in his room, changing his dressings on his arm, and I was watching them talk. And guys, it was the coolest thing in the world because they were talking about their life together and how they wanted to take a second honeymoon, and he couldn't wait to see his dog at home. His mom was on his way to visit him and talk to him for the first time. And I literally stood beside him with tears in my eyes thinking, this is it. This is why I want to be a doctor. I'm going to fix these people. I'm going to make them better. I'm going to give them life back. I want to help and serve people, just like you guys. And they've been talking about 30 minutes, and he told her that he was tired, and he asked her to go downstairs and get him a milkshake. And she was so incredibly excited. She puffed up, and she was like, I'm going to go this right now. And she almost skipped outside of his particular room. And she walked out, and the elevators were right outside his room, and he never took his eyes off of her. He watched her walk all the way to the elevator, and the elevator doors opened, and she stepped inside, and he looked at her, and she blew him a kiss, and he blew her a kiss back, and the doors closed. And I thought it was the most incredible thing in the world. And he turned and he looked at me, and he said, "Thank you." And I had no idea what he was thanking me for. And he sighed, and he took a deep breath, and he coded right there in front of me. He died. And I pushed the button, and they ran the code. They ran an entire code trying to bring this guy back, and he died before his wife ever got back up there. And it devastated me. I literally thought, I can't go to med school. I can't do this. So for like 2 weeks, I struggled in the burn unit trying to decide if I wanted to go to med school. And one of my attendings pulled me aside, and he said, "You don't get it." And I was like, "What do I not get?" And he said, "Honey, I've watched you in this burn unit." He said, "You are great as a medical assistant. You can start IVs. You got the treatment. You've got the I want to be a doctor." He said, "But being a doctor is not about you. Being a doctor is about people, not patients, not diseases, not about power, not about giving life, but about people. We are blessed with the most amazing career because people come to us for that help, and we get insight into their most private parts of their lives. But you've got to remember that it's not just the person you're treating. It's a person with a life and a family and an existence. He left behind a mother who never got to see her son again. He left behind a wife who he shared last precious moments with. That doctor said, we knew he was going to die, and that guy knew he was going to die, and he fought for that moment to leave his wife with those precious moments. And he said, never lose sight of the beauty of the career that we have been given. And I've never let go of that. And everybody that I work with, I want to help you guys understand that medicine is about so much more than just being a doctor and curing diseases and curing patients and about the white coat. It's about this glorious opportunity to learn from every person who walks through your door. So in getting clinical experiences, you shadow physicians, you watch their world, you watch what they do. So we're looking for a diversity of experience. So you've looked at different types of specialties, and one of those needs to be primary care. We're looking for you to test the waters to see what you're interested in and aim for a minimum of 100 hours. Ask your doctor if you can shadow him. Do a medical mission trip. Volunteer at your local clinic and get paid clinical. Get your EMT. Get your CNA and work in a nursing home. I get people all the time who go, I don't want to work in a nursing home. I don't want to change bed linens. I don't want to do that stuff. I can tell you nothing impresses a medical admissions committee more, that you've actually been out there and worked in the trenches to see what it's like. And like I said, paid clinical, this is where taking that gap year and working, really working in the real world can pay off. Service. Guys, service is so important. And it's great to work in a blood drive or to work as a candy striper and volunteer in a hospital, but we're looking at service for at least 6 months, for at least 50 hours, and we'd like to see you guys get outside your comfort zone. You should change through the service you do, not just the fact that you're doing service. Excuse me. We often feed the homeless downtown. A lot of people feed the homeless. We pack lunches and take them downtown. And my students used to be so excited about that. And I was like, guys, it is so much more. And one day we were passing out lunches, and my son had a whole bucket of lunches, and he had just passed out his last lunch. And a little 5-year-old girl pulled on the bottom of his shorts and said, "Hey, mister, do you have any more lunches left?" And she said, "My mom and brother and I haven't eaten today, and we're really hungry." And my son looked at me, and he had big tears in his eyes, and he knew that he had just given out his last lunch. Well, where we give out lunches, there's one lady that we always handed out lunches to. She was wheelchair bound, and she lived out of her van. And she called my son over to her van and she handed her lunch out the window and she pointed for him to give it to that little girl. My son took it over, gave it to the little girl, and the little girl scampered off. And my son looked at me and he said, "We really don't do anything here, do we?" And I said, "Now you're figuring it out." And he said, "She just did more by giving the only food she had to this little girl than we do every week." He said, "We have everything." And I said, "Now you're understanding that these people are just like you, even though they're different. Understanding those you're serving and how you can grow through the service that you do, affecting a change in a person's life, but also how it changes you, so that you can really understand a selflessness and being outside your comfort zone." So oftentimes we talk about volunteering with hospice, people who are at the end of their life, becoming a mentor with big brother, big sister. You can learn so much from being outside your comfort zone. Leadership. Guys, I don't care if you're the president of the Mickey Mouse Club or the president of the United States. Well, maybe somewhere in between there. But leadership is about becoming an effective leader, how you manage and work with people. And I can guarantee you guys have all taken some type of leadership position that somebody was in that position before you and you were like, "I can do that. I can do that better than you." And then you get in that position and it's like, why won't people listen to me? Why won't they follow me? So an effective leader is someone that somebody can believe in, but also makes members of their team feel valued. Because guys, in your future medical practice, the people who work with you are going to be dependent on you for their salaries, but they need to feel part of their team. So if like the front desk person thinks you don't think that they're valuable and they piss off everybody who comes in to check in, by the time that person gets to you, they're going to be unhappy. And they're not going to see the front desk person. They're going to see your whole practice. So an effective leader demonstrates management skills. They engender trust in the others, that they feel like they're a part of that team and can take the reins in bad situations. And you learn that by doing that. So that's why we're looking for. So building your application is not just about getting a shiny GPA and a great test score, but about building each parts of these from your freshman year. So this is going to start the minute you hit the ground when you go to college. So as you guys are getting ready to apply, look at the things that the school plans. Look at what they offer. Look at their curricula and start thinking about how you're going to lay out your plan for the 3 to 4 years. Social. Guys, this is not your dating schedule, although I hope that goes really well. But when I'm talking about social experiences, you're going to have to relate to people who are different than you. So what things have you done? Have you joined clubs and fraternities and sororities? Have you been a part of that? Have you expanded your network? What are things you're interested in? Because med school and college are very stressful. We like to know that you have outlets for things to do and that you have a support system. And I know sometimes maybe you guys get stressed in high school and maybe now I do yoga. And for me, if I go do 30 minutes of yoga and regroup, I am so much more of an effective studier or worker. All right, so make sure that you have personal interest outside of medicine so that you can work with other people. So I briefly alluded to, and you don't need to know all this, but the medical application starts in about May and June of whatever year you're applying. Typically, you want to submit your primary application in June. That's going to be your personal statement, your experiences. Of those, you will pick 3 that are most meaningful, your letters of recommendation, and all of your coursework. Once you submit that, and the average student submits about 7,000 to 15,000 applications, if you do the math on that, you're figuring med schools are getting close to 1 million applications a year. Okay, most of my students submit to about 20 schools. Then you're going to get secondary applications that are going to also want money and for you to write 3 to 4 more essays. 4 essays, 20 schools. That's 80 essays. Keep that in mind when you're thinking about schools. And then you're going to get interviews. Now, as an average, what we see is the person is going to apply to about 20 schools. About 85% of schools automatically send secondaries. You hope to get 3 to 5 interviews in a good year for maybe one acceptance. Remember what I told you? Going from the college to the pros. You've got to find ways to make yourself stand out past just your GPA and your MCAT score. You can get into your dream school. We are here to help with that, okay? But it's about getting educated. It's about thinking about what you're doing, and it's about getting that exposure, okay? So pieces of advice, things that I would tell you to do. Take your time right now to really start thinking about your career and what it means and getting some exposure. Okay, so doing medical mission trips, even this early, if you can do them, great opportunity to get out in the field and look at those. Take some time to maybe really do some shadowing if you can get a physician to let you, just to figure out what it's like to be out there in practice, okay? If you can do a summer enrichment program where maybe you can get some time in the lab, figure out what you like and what you're interested in. Start planning and looking at schools. I often get kids who go, I want to go to the best school to get into the best med school. That's not the way it works. You want to go to a strong school with a strong background, but many times kids think, well, if I go to a school that has a med school attached, that's going to get me a segue in. It doesn't work that way. Okay, start researching your schools. Think about where you're going to apply. You're going to have a better chance for your in-state schools where you're in state. If you're looking out of state, it's probably going to be a private institution. You're looking at up to $300,000, $400,000 in debt if you're looking at some of those overall costs. So start thinking about it now, what this journey means. And we look at a lot of kids who take a gap year between high school and college to figure out, gain some more exposure and spend some time. When you get to college, make it a journey, not a sprint. Don't make it a checklist, okay? This is not a checklist. This is about making unique things about you. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that when we review applications, we spend an average of about 1.5 minutes to 3 minutes on each application. And we are looking for the things that stand out. Think about your favorite TV show. I don't know if any of you guys watch Walking Dead, if you've watched any of those shows, Breaking Bad, things like that. When you think about your favorite TV show and the last time you saw it, you don't remember all the dialogue from that show. You remember specific scenes, things that stand out in your head. When you're writing your high school application for college, when you're writing your college application for med school, you want to make your personal statement and your experiences stand out so that in that 3 minutes I'm spending, I'm going, oh, that's the girl who did that mission trip, who did that research, who had that personal experience, okay? So I'm getting ready to turn this over to some questions. We're going to have a poll in just a second, but I'm going to share a minute with you. So I told you guys that I'm a physician, and I've worked in this field, and I really got that understanding, and I preach all the time about understanding patients and people, okay? You've got to remember that every patient that you walk into that room with is a person with a history behind them. So this past weekend, I unexpectedly lost my father. And I'm sharing this with you for a reason, because my father was almost 90 years old. He was married to my mother for 69 years. In 69 years, they had never spent a single day or night apart. And that particular morning, he started to experience some pain in his right side. Basically, the gist of it was, by the time we got him to the hospital, they thought he had had a small stroke. Nothing really major, even in a 90-year-old who had been fairly fit. Throughout the day, he had gone through a history of MRIs, CT scans for them to try to figure out what was going on. They got his blood pressure and everything under control. But this was a man who in his past year had undergone some health decline, had lost some vision, but the biggest thing was he had been an active runner, gardener, etc., and had developed peripheral neuropathy, which means he couldn't pick up his feet very well. It had taken his mobility, his ability, everything to drive away. So when he got to the hospital that day, I think in his heart, he had kind of decided it was his time. And that particular day, the physicians came in, said, it looks really good. Everything's in order. His blood pressure's good. It's a mild stroke. We're just going to take him to neurology for a few minutes. Probably keep him there overnight and then send him home tomorrow, but we think he's going to be okay. But the power of the human spirit and the person. My father clearly had decided it was his time, and he asked my mother before they took him upstairs to lean down and talk to him. And they leaned in very close, and they talked for a few minutes, and he took his hands, and he touched every inch of her face. He committed every bit of it to memory. And as he had done every morning and every night, he told her he loved her. And then he turned on his side, and he passed quietly, so she did not have to see him. Medicine, everything we can do, cannot change the power of the human spirit or where we are. The doctors were so apologetic, and the family said, no, he did it on his time. But when the night closed and the doctors went away and the other people were gone, they went home to their families. Left behind was that family. Left behind was a woman who had never slept apart from her husband. Left behind were grandchildren that there had been the matriarch for. That is what you want to think about with every patient that you talk with. What else is going on in their lives that could be impacting what you're seeing right there? And the beauty of medicine is sharing those journeys and those parts and those highs and those lows. It can be the most rewarding career on this planet. Not just serving and taking care of people and loving science, which we all do, but who we are in that. Anna, if you'd like to give your last question, and I've got a few minutes, not much, but I'd love to take a few of your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Anita. And so our last question for the evening is going to be, would you be interested in one of our free college admissions consultations? And so you can meet with our team here at the Princeton Review, and they can help make sure that you are on the right path with all of your extracurriculars and your course decisions for your current high school year coming up, and just making sure that you are on the right path to that medical school career that you are very interested in pursuing. So I see that a lot of you are answering, so I do appreciate that. We have all of your contact information from your registration, so our team will be reaching out to those of you who have raised their hand to say yes, that you would be interested in receiving consultation. I do thank you so much for that. And then just before we go on to the questions, I just want to throw this up there on the screen so everyone can see our contact information. If you do have any questions after tonight's session, things that pop up, I know it always happens to me when I'm attending certain events and webinars, please feel free to go ahead and email us at questions@review.com, and we will do our best to get you answers within the next couple of days. Again, I just want to say thank you to Anita for sharing all of her wonderful experiences and her stories. They're truly inspiring, and I hope that everyone in the session tonight felt the same way. So we did get a bunch of questions during this evening, and so I'm just going to jump right in. Are you ready, Anita?
I am ready.
Okay. So this one's actually
Sorry, and I hope I get to work with you guys sometimes when after the Princeton Review helps you get into your best college, and then you come on and work with me while you're in college and get you guys to med school. It's a great team. So we've got what it takes. Let me have some questions.
Excellent. So this first question I want to present to you is actually one specific to you based on your background and what you had shared with us earlier in the evening. And this question is, what was it like obtaining a PhD? The student is considering applying to an MD PhD program, but would like to know the kind of medical exposure, if any, a student would get during, while doing grad research. Would you have any insight into that?
Yeah, as a general rule, if we're talking about those who want to, and just so you guys understand, I actually decided to add my PhDs while I was in med school. So I applied to a traditional MD program, and after my second year, I took 2 years off and went and did the first part of my PhD, did my first PhD, and then I finished the second one while I was doing the last parts of my med school. That's not generally the way I recommend doing it. I just happened to come to that decision later on. Generally, people apply to an MD PhD program. What we are looking for is the base standards of about 100 hours of clinical exposure, but the research is much more. We expect to see at least 2 full years of undergraduate research, ideally in 2 labs, along with some summer exposure. So it would be great in high school if you can do like a summer research program, because honestly, what you think research is and then what you realize research is after you actually get into it are 2 different things. So before you commit a lot of time along that, sometimes it's good to do that in the summer, but when you get to college, try to start as early as possible to figure out if that's really your route. Ideally by the second semester of your freshman year, at least by the beginning of your sophomore year, because you've got to get those 2 full years in before the end of your junior year, or take a gap year. Hopefully that got your question.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anita. The next question we got was, and there's a couple of students who sent this question in, so I'm glad we're able to answer it for them. But they actually are asking in regards to taking AP classes in high school, would AP classes count for the science credits once they get into their freshman and sophomore and junior years for pre-med requisites?
Yeah, and there's a lot of debate about that. I'm actually a strong proponent of advanced placement courses because so there are a few med schools that will not accept AP credit. However, when you consider biology, getting AP credit in biology, almost all pre-med students take additional upper level biology. So let's say you get intro bio 1 and 2, which are boring anyway, credit. You typically go on and take like an anatomy or some additional bio. Some people will get beginning chemistry credit, but they go on and take additional organic chemistry. The one that you typically don't take upper level credits are physics. I'd have never gotten AP physics credit in physics anyway. I mean, I got this whole theory, like if there's a monkey in the tree and you shoot the monkey out of the tree, with what velocity does the monkey hit the ground? I'm a scientist, okay? I don't care. Monkey's dead, I'm gonna dissect him. So physics just never made sense to me. But physics is the one that most med schools will look the other way as long as you do okay on your MCAT, because you don't typically take upper level coursework. And if you get credit in AP Psych, definitely make sure to take another one. So it's a general rule of thumb. I like AP credit because it allows students to take additional coursework and you don't pay for it. But by the other side, I am not a big fan of early college or the associate's degree, or even if you get it, I don't say that you should try to graduate college in 2 years, because it's really, really hard to get the stuff that you need to apply, and also you're super young. Remember, med schools don't like the super young student. I hope that hit on everything. I tried to touch on all aspects of AP.
Excellent. All right. You had mentioned this before when you were talking about experiences, but could you just go through again the benefits of job shadowing?
Of clinical shadowing?
Yeah, clinical shadowing, yeah.
Yeah, it is great for the opportunity to learn what a day in the life is like. And that's where a lot of kids put so much emphasis on hours and hours and hours of being like a volunteer in a hospital. And again, patient transport, being there, that's great for getting a sense of what the patient is going through. But really take that time to talk with the patients, learn what's going on. That's the benefit of that volunteering. I'd far rather see you volunteering in something else like Big Brother or Boys and Girls Club. Clinical experience comes from actually spending that time behind that physician, observing in an ER, getting time to observe a surgery, getting the time to spend an entire day with a physician watching what exactly he does. But here's an important thing, okay? Do not expect to go into a medical practice and go, I'd like a summer internship, or I would like time working with you. So let me let you think about this. You're in high school. How about if I came to you and said, I'm going to give you a kindergarten student to shadow you for a day? You might be willing to do that. If I told you this kindergarten student is going to hang out with you for a semester, there's no way you are going to allow that. Or if you ask that kindergarten student to help do your work, you don't have the clinical training, and if you went in to see a doctor, would you want them taking care of you? So be realistic in the types of opportunities you're seeking out. And if your school offers one of the health professions areas where you can get your CNA or your EMT, absolutely do it, because you can use that throughout college to get additional experience. I know we're a little over time, but Anna, if you have another question real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple more, so you just let me know when we need to stop. I want to try to get these folks their answers.
Yeah, let's take 5 more minutes if I can get those couple of questions in.
Absolutely, absolutely. Real quick, I think this question will go quick. Does it matter if the student goes to a prestigious undergrad school? What does that help their chances of getting into medical school at all?
Okay, so I get this question a lot because oftentimes I get kids who go, I really want to go to Duke because Duke is really prestigious and I'm going to get into med school. The thing is, if you go to a super prestigious med school, now when it comes down to like the final, if I'm down to 4 applicants and one went to a Mickey Mouse college and one went to Duke, and they have the exact same credentials, yes, that's going to hold more weight. But in the core screen, we're not screening on where you went to school. We're screening on your GPA and your test score. So you want to go to a strong school, but it's not, I mean, saying I went to Harvard and I got a 3.4 is not going to get you anywhere. If you don't have the core credentials, it's not going to get you there. Go to a strong school, but it doesn't have to be a top level, top 10 Ivy League school. Just strong in what you're studying.
Excellent. Another question, would being bilingual be helpful to getting into med school?
Oh, heck yeah. That's a good one, especially today. Bilingual, Spanish, different Indian dialects, Chinese, yes, very much so. Russian, Romanian. It is becoming much and much more prevalent. Trilingual is really great. Unfortunately, like for me, I speak Twi and Creole. That's really not going to get me a lot of places, but I mean, it gets me some places, but being bilingual really, really, really can be an asset, especially depending upon the areas of the country that you do. I would strongly also encourage, if you're not already, some of the summer immersion programs. So like you do a summer study abroad or a whole semester where you're actually in a country where you use your language. That's even more so.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Anita. All right, a couple more. One question that came in was, I'm just trying to find it here. What are the chances of a student with a high school degree applying to medical school without an undergrad degree?
Although a undergrad degree is not required, if you're saying like just out of high school, never, not going to happen. Period. Not going to happen in the U.S. Got to have the core prerequisites. Without an undergrad degree, it is strongly frowned upon. You would pretty much have to be in like the 98th percentile of your MCAT score and a 4.0 with really, really amazing strong credentials, because look what you're competing against. If you're looking at an acceptance rate of about 40%, there are going to be a bunch of other people out there, not only with undergrad degrees, but with master's and other advanced degrees that you're competing against. So pretty much non-existent.
Okay. If a student were to decide to take a gap year between college and medical school, what would be the timeline to then start submitting applications and taking the MCAT? Would it essentially just get bumped by a year? Is that a typical way to look at it, or what would be your recommendation for that?
Yeah, it would typically get bumped by a year, unless they're planning on taking a gap year on the other side. So that was, did they say between high school and college, or college and med school?
College and med school.
Oh, between college and med school. Okay, yes. So typically what you would look to do, most folks finish their senior year, and this is where it's so beneficial, because if they finish their senior year, typically graduating the 1st of May, many of those folks will get a job as like a medical scribe, or they'll have plans to do some international trip. They can actually, when they submit their application, if they have started that position, they can estimate their hours going forward. So let's say I graduate college, I'm going to take a gap year, I get a job as a medical scribe, I'm going to be working 40 hours a week for the next year. When I put my application in, I can actually put in my estimated number of hours. Why is that important? Electronic screen. They're screening GPA and test score. The next thing is they screen on hours on each of those parameters and those experiences. That can make that person stand out. By the time they get to their interview, they've already been out there in the trenches working for 4 to 5 months. That's going to make them a much, much more appealing applicant. So any area they're weak in, they can address in those gap years by the time that they get to their interview. It is extremely appealing, and right now we're seeing about 60% of students take a gap year. You got one more for me and then we'll go.
Yep, exactly. All right, one more question. Do medical schools look at all undergraduate schools at the same way? And I'll give you an example. Is a 3.7 from an Ivy League more impressive than a 3.7 from a non-Ivy League school?
We touched on this briefly before. Because our screening parameters are on numerics and not by on particular institutions, baseline screening and screening for secondaries and then screening for interview tends to be on those numerical parameters. Then once they get a student in for an interview and they go into committee, that's typically where that screen would come in. So if they've got 10 students and they can admit 4, and they're weighting them, if they come out pretty equally, then we'll give a little bit more credence, but honestly not enough to go, God, if I don't get into an Ivy League school, there's no way I'm going to get into med school. I mean, I went to a typical R1 institution. I actually did my undergrad at NC State. I came out with a strong GPA, a very strong MCAT score. I applied to 5 schools. I got into 5 schools. And I got into 3 schools that were in the top 10.
Okay, awesome. Anita, thank you so much for joining us this evening. For those of you that are on the call today, again, if you have any questions after tonight, please feel free to reach out to us at questions@review.com. For those of you that submitted questions and we weren't actually able to answer them, we do have a transcript of all your questions, and so we'll be sending them to our admissions team. And so you will be receiving answers for all of your questions. Do not fret. I know a lot of you submitted some things. We just weren't able to cover it in the hour that we had scheduled for this evening. But we want to make sure that we leave you with all of the right information that you need to make the best decision for your next steps. So again, thank you for joining us. Anita, thank you for your time and your expertise. And I hope everyone has a great evening.
Have a good one, folks. Thanks.